now I would like to invite the GIA panel to the floor. Thank you. So they are Dave Talbot from MPI, Ricky Leahy, John Hartnell, and Medhat Nas. And I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thanks everybody. My name is Dave Talbot from MPI and I'm the GIA manager, and I've been working at MPI for the last 3 years on GIA. I've really enjoyed the talks this morning and this afternoon, but I recognise we're in the graveyard shift now, so I intend my talk to be very pithy, and then we can go on with the questions with the panel discussion. I'll just make sure. Right. So what I like to say before with GIA is that for us to remember before we get into GIA in terms of where we're at and moving forward, just to remind ourselves what is GIA and why. It's a partnership between the Crown and with industry. And the intention is to get better biosecurity through partnership. And this is going to occur through 3 operational components. The first one is during responses, we partner with industry and we have you both have a seat at the table with MPI. Secondly, we do some readiness work and agree the sort of context and the structure around responses through operational agreements. And the third point, which I'll cover a bit later on, is about engagement across the system. On GIA actually gives us a formal obligation for MPI to engage across the layers of the system with our GIA partners. Over the last 3 years, we went from signing the deed and we've been rapidly moving into operational mode with GIA and the partnership. We expect that in the next couple of years there'll be up to 25 to 30 primary groups who would have joined GIA, and that will represent the sort of the greater majority of primary industry. At the moment we have 9, there's 4 going through the formal application process at the moment, and we expect probably by about Christmas there'll be 15 groups have joined GIA. In terms of response, once you sign the deed, there's a formal obligation for MPI, if there's an investigation that may impact on your sector, to give a heads up and also to go through that rapid sort of notification process during that investigation that may lead through to response. If there is a response that impacts on your sector, you have a seat at the table in response to actually guide the response. We've had a couple of responses over the last few years of which we've had partners at the table. There's been a few other responses where we've had some potential partners who've been invited to the table to give us some sort of on technical advice and act as observers. We're now really just working through fine-tuning the processes and just thinking about things like induction and training for our partners. Just recently, or last month, we signed the first operational agreement for fruit fly with KVH for the kiwi fruit sector, with avocados and citrus, and with MPI. With Barry O'Neill, who's the CEO of Kiwi Fruit Vine House. He was appointed the chair, and we're working through a process now to go through a multi-year readiness program, which will be focusing on improvements in surveillance and also improvements around our response planning for fruit fly. We're also progressing in operational agreements, sort of on sector-based agreements with forestry, equine, KVH and with pork. And what we're doing there is just focusing on one project that's a priority for each of those groups. For example, with equine, we're focusing on equine influenza. What sort of planning can we do in case that virus comes to New Zealand? And we're also going through the process with all the livestock groups on foot and mouth disease as well. A key component of GIA is this engagement across the system. So we have a shared understanding of the system and its performance, our respective roles and responsibilities, and how we can best to work together to actually mitigate the risks across the layers. So this is still work in progress, and just a few weeks ago with the MPI directors who are involved in the various parts of the system, met with key leaders from the industry to work through how does engagement currently occur, and also what are some of the opportunities for us to improve. And one example of that engagement, Steve Gilbert, who's the Director of Border Clearance, gave a really in-depth briefing about the summer operations this year in terms of the border, the pathways, the facts, the figures, and also some of the work that's going on to actually improve the border. And just my last slide is that we're really excited and looking forward to working with Apiculture New Zealand. A lot of my colleagues are really looking forward to doing that. And some of the things that we've been thinking about, and it'll be sort of useful for further discussion, is there an opportunity to start working closer together now, and perhaps in a joint working group, and exploring where are some of the opportunities and also on some of the issues that we can seek to manage. And this is about starting to actually gather the wealth of information that's being worked on and putting it all together. So, for example, a few years ago, we went into on Exercise Gemini for a tabletop work on small hive beetle. And there's a whole range of work that's been going on, which has been talked about today and tomorrow. And we'd like to pull all that together and then try to see, okay, what are the opportunities can we work together under GIA? So thanks very much. That's my talk.
I invited Medhat to sit with us today because he's just been involved in the small hive beetle incursion in Canada. So I'm going to ask him to just give us a snapshot of what happened and how things are progressing there. So thank you.
I guess the Canadian system is not too different from here. We call the same kind of organization stakeholders roundtable, government with producers, and CAPA, the one I was talking about, Canadian Professional Organization, scientists, regulators, work together as a team. But also we bring some other industries associated with us, like the pollinators and the horticulture. We are getting also the pesticide companies, because all of us, we care about bee health. And the same kind of program, actually, biosecurity, for some reason, it is all over the globe right now, and we follow the same process. Our issues, actually, we spent a lot of time about imports, because that's where some risks come about disease spread and so forth. And you understand, since our closure of the border with the United States in 1987, we are always under lots of pressure to reopen the Canadian border for the bees from the United States. And again, with the beekeeping industry, every day we see some pests, and the recent one came, small hive beetle. There's no barriers between us and the United States, and we got several incursions over the last several years. But last year we got over 20 some incursions into Niagara area in Ontario, about 10 incursions into BC, and that's become a new issue for us. So we are working together as a group to develop a strategy how to respond, but also each province has its own regulation, which will regulate the bee movement for interprovincial movement. So we have the two levels, federal and provincial. And yeah, it's a lots of challenge, because two things we have to watch for: how to manage risk and facilitate commerce. And these two things can go against each other. That tells you sometimes, like some of these meetings becomes quite interesting. That's the least they say. But that's the reality of our life. And actually, any action we take in Canada, we have to talk to our partners how we handle that, so also it can be considered for any trade issues and the future of the industry. So it's an interesting situation we are at. If you have questions about the small hive beetle, I'm around, and we've been handling that stuff for the last 9 months, and that's quite stressful situation at the time we're going through. Thank you.
Okay. There we go. So really this is just a general session now. Happy to take any questions about GIA. Obviously from an industry's perspective we have some work to do to progress this now, but I certainly from a personal position believe that it's very important for us to be a partner at the table. I would rather be at the table than not, and I certainly don't want other industries making decisions for our industry. So that's my personal viewpoint. Obviously we're going to have to go through a consultation process and seek input from all our stakeholders on GIA, but certainly there's a strong indication from MPI now and government that they're very keen for us to move this forward, and I think that we have a responsibility to act accordingly. So open the floor up if anybody's got any questions. If you haven't got any questions, then I guess I'll tell you that the bar is open and there's food out there, and be very welcome to go and do that. So anybody got a question? Alan, I don't know that answer yet, but to be a deed secretary is not a big expense. The real cost comes in when you start to look at operational agreements. David may be able to comment on that particular element.
Yes, you're quite correct, John. You know, the main cost comes in the operational agreements, but it does come down to of joint priority. So it's just not like you're writing a blank cheque and then with the money flows through. It's about what do you want to do to actually manage risk, and then with MPI comes along what's our joint priority as well. I like to think there are some work that we'd like to work with you all on, but again we have to work through that process and scope it up and cost it up and agree, yes, that's a joint priority.
Hi, I'm Michelle Taylor. I guess I wonder if this is a biosecurity issue for bees. Why are other industries determining how this should be dealt with when it's actually going to impact on the beekeepers? So if you could perhaps answer that question, that number one, why, how much of a say do beekeepers get versus the other industries? And why are we not already at the table? Because government is representing New Zealanders, beekeepers, so aren't we already at the table?
That is a multifaceted question there. The first question is that when we go into a response, we look at to see who is a directly impacted sector. So under GIA now, the first question our investigators and response people are doing is, okay, there's this bug, who's directly impacted? Okay, there's no GIA partners, okay, we go through the next process. So the first point is that if there is a bee issue, we go through the list and go, who's directly impacted? It is the bee industry. So John or somebody would actually get a phone call saying, hey, we have a suspect risk, and we'll go through. It does get a bit more tricky about who's directly impacted, because you've got the bee sector, of course, but of course bees impact on other sectors. So I don't have the true answer on that, but we have to work through that with the bee industry and also with some of the the other sectors who may be impacted when there is a response or there is some pest in there. So, because after all, you know, the bees, they do a lot of pollination that impact on 4.5 billion a year. So we have to work our way through that. So how much is a public good versus how much is an industry good as well?
For the Canadian incursion of small hive beetle, have you considered eradication, and how is that going?
I guess Donald Trump will help us if he put that wall so that way eradication can work. No. We have to be realistic. Most of the bees come to the Canadian border actually from Florida and Georgia and all of the stuff, so the incursion will continue. And the other example, if you look at Italy, even though they are so far away and we don't know how to move down there, they eradicated 1 year and it's been a struggle for the last 2 or 3 years. It keeps coming back. So small hive beetles, very hard pest. If you look at the biology and their behavior, it's hard to nail it down. And with the movement of bees for pollination and honey and activities the beekeepers are doing, it is quite difficult. So we never really considered that one.
I might just add to that, with Roger, he caught me up in the hotel yesterday and asked me quite a few questions, but we did talk about the importance of finding it really, really early, not just a small hive beetle, but other pests. And with Dan Vink this morning with his surveillance, you know, the passive surveillance is really, really important. Yes, we can do some targeted surveillance, which would be quite interesting, you know, be worthwhile to discuss at some stage, but it's really the beekeepers out there in the field finding something early and ringing that hotline.
Does this mean we're going to get, say, if there is issues with, say, the kiwi fruit or the apple industry, in terms of if there's bug swap sprays and such that might be used?
It goes back to when we have going in from an investigation into a response, we try to work out who is potentially impacted. So the point when we're going into a response, we do the ring around and we go look from our lit reviews or what we know about this pathogen. Often it's unknown, we often don't know everything. So we will be ringing around a number of partners and saying, look, we've got this pest, here's the information, we think that you are directly impacted, can we have that first meeting to discuss? And in some cases, the industry group will say, no, it's low impact or we're not, we don't want to be involved. So it's a conversation we have now with industry to work out the process we do to go into response. So it's easy with fruit fly because we know, but even then, who's directly impacted by fruit fly can be a bit of a challenge as well.
Importations of honey or bee products obviously increase the risk of imports of unwanted diseases in organisms. What is the effect going to be of us signing up with GIA on imports of honey and bee products? Also, as a second question, if I may, kiwi fruit industry, if we have small hive beetle or perhaps European flower brood coming to New Zealand, it could be absolutely devastating on many industries if we can't ship bees. Now, it's going to be a huge cost to them. You know, are they going to be really involved in it in the early stages? Because it's going to cost them a lot more than it cost us. We're only a very minor party where the bee disease comes into New Zealand because of the pollination factors.
That was sort of touched on this morning with Scott when he was giving his opening presentation from MPI about with IHSs. With under GIA, there is an obligation for MPI to engage with our partners right across the layers of the system. We're still working on the guidance and how it's going to work, but it's about each party having an understanding of each of our roles and where we can actually connect in to have those engagements. And we're looking to do that as early as we can. So we're mapping that out at the moment, but again, you know, with the MPI has its statutory role that it must perform, and you have your role to be involved as we go through those formal sort of on consultations and briefings around with IHSs. So it's still work in progress, but I must say that the meeting that we had a few weeks ago between the MPI directors and with industry leaders, I think it's starting to work its way through about where can we engage and what are the opportunities. But I can't sort of fully answer that question at the moment.
Do I blow the whistle? Okay, thank you very much everybody. Thank you for your participation today, and please go enjoy the hospitality of Manuka Health in the Trade Buzz area. It's called a swarmin', and it means exactly that. Thank you.